Welcome to our little show, where the wild ideas flow. We plant the seeds in dusty ground, watch them rise without a sound. Marketing dreams, tech extremes, AI's the spark behind the beams. Tales from the dirt road, where the whispers turn bold. Stories twist and stories grow. Where will our story go?
Liz, you do not know how excited I got when I saw this topic come across on the text. I don't know if I know you know this, but some of the listeners may not know. I live in pretty rural Oklahoma, and when we were talking about branding, I mean, if I could show pictures, like I get on cows, wrestle them down, we get on a big iron. So I am super excited to show pro tips on how to basically, brand those cows, cattle, anything. So are you good with that? Is this kind of where we're thinking on our branding topic for today?
Ooh, Tony, I hate to burst your bubble. We're talking about a different kind of branding today.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm not sure I'm ready to move on, but maybe we can. Maybe we can. Okay, well, then Liz, why don't you move us in the right direction on our branding discussion today?
Absolutely. So before we started, I was filling Tony in. I teach an entrepreneurship class, which is always really fun because I love being around newbie entrepreneurs. The excitement, but also that stress, right? It can be overwhelming, but I really do enjoy the energy. They're coming to the table with really good, really unique ideas. They want to make a difference in their market or their industry, and it reinvigorates me. I teach this course a couple times a year, and I always come away feeling re-energized. So I teach the segment called establishing your brand, right? And we open it's a two section module, so it's typically like a Tuesday, Thursday night. And we always open with a discussion about what do you think a brand is? And I let the students talk and kind of weigh in, and inevitably where the conversation goes is, well, your brand is it's the logo, it's that tagline, it's that first thing people see when they're driving by or when you hand them a business card. I mean, I know most people aren't using business cards anymore, but they tend to gravitate towards the more tangible elements of a brand. And then we spend the next 2 evenings really digging into what a brand is. And obviously, Tony, you and I know the logo and the visual components are so important. They deserve attention and time and thought, but there are so many more important elements to a brand. I find digging into that to be really fun. And I figured that's what we'd chat about today.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, the logo and the brand marking, that type of thing is the very easy, very tangible piece of a brand, but it goes much deeper. And I think that's why people sometimes don't understand the cost and or time associated with developing a very strong brand for a long-term company or organization.
Yeah. And I think before you ever put pen to paper, you need to think through some who you are, as who is your company as a brand? What is that brand story that you want to tell? What is your unique selling proposition, right? Going down that path of thinking through mission, vision, values. Tony, I know you've done brand work for clients. I haven't done it in a while. I love it, but I find it to be very mentally taxing at times. So I'm not doing a ton of it right now, even though I love it. But there's a process, right? Clients don't always, even established businesses, if they're trying to get to the next level, they're like, well, we're not really sure, but we need that, we got to figure this out, right? So sitting through and walking them through the process of, okay, let's clarify, who are you? What Is something shifting in your business? Do we need to define a new value proposition, or do we need clarity around what you've been delivering for the last however many years? Um, Again, mission, vision, values. I think those deserve a lot of time before we even talk. What's the pretty fun stuff? What are the colors and fonts? So,
Yeah. And I
yeah.
would like to just kind of put a pause in this only because I want people to really hear what you're saying, which is this is a deep dive. I mean, this is not, do you like blue or red? You're asking very fundamental, principle-based questions about an organization or a business that ultimately will be reflected in their brand marketing, brand mission, so on and so forth. But this is a difficult situation I don't know how to process. I mean, if you do it correctly and you bring the right people to the table, oftentimes it becomes very cathartic. It's almost like a business enema, where you're just like get all of this stuff out and you realize, oh, our value proposition is much, much different than we thought. And it was basically because we were trying to figure out if we wanted an alligator or a tiger on a shirt. Basically, I mean, that's kind of how it matriculates. So
Yeah. And like I've said, it's a useful exercise for established businesses. I spent the first, I don't know, however, 8, 10 years of my business with some core values and truthfully, a kind of loosey-goosey value proposition. And when I joined the EO Accelerator program, they put a lot of emphasis on core values and vision. Where are you going? You got to get very clear on that so your team can kind of fall in line and help you achieve that mission, right? So, anyways, yeah, I went in there and I was like, my core values are great and I know what I'm doing. And as I dug deeper, I was like, whoa, these need some work. So I spent some quiet reflective time thinking about, okay, what is important to me? And I wasn't way off base that, I didn't completely throw everything away, but I definitely needed some clarity. And then I did seek input from some trusted sources. And by the way, I was doing this, I would have sought input from my employees, but at the time I was still all subcontractor, and I didn't want, I knew they weren't going to be with me long term. So I worked on this solo and with some trusted business resources. And then I started hiring based on core values. That's a whole nother episode. We're not here to talk about that today. Um, but the point is, I had been an established business and I took a step back and I said, whoa, things need to be clarified and revised. And now I'm moving forward, I think, from a much stronger position to, again, hire and deliver great work.
do you find that that's how do I say this? Emblematic. Is that often the case? In other words, do you find that when people are going through the branding process, they kind of start on one side of the shredder and they get through it and they realize it kind of hurts, but by the time they're done, the end product is not like we talked about, not just the tangible items that the consumer sees, but also is there a benefit or something internally from going through the process, in your opinion?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I've worked with many clients where I'm just asking questions. A lot of what I'm asking are just clarifying questions. Like, tell me more about that, or how does that work, right? And I can see the wheels spinning for oh, I never thought about that. Well, maybe we should, maybe I've been doing it this way for so long, but maybe we need to rethink this because the things are evolving, the industry is evolving, clients are evolving. And yes, they walk away like, wow, I didn't think I was going to completely ditch that service, but after talking through it, that really doesn't align with where we're going, where we're heading. So I think that's exciting.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. And it's exciting, kind of calling back something you said in the beginning of the podcast, as the instigator, the mediator through the process, the person that's holding the person's hand, asking questions, it is reviving or rejuvenating to see these people because it's almost like they fall back in love with their business, or maybe they fall back in love with the passion that they originally had that they kind of lost on a day-to-day basis. And you're really bringing them to a new level in their company that they may or may not have realized they needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's always exciting to see the evolution of a company in this way. So, so yeah, we talk a lot about, yeah, who you are, right? Getting clarity around these pieces we've mentioned, and then we spend some time in the course. Sorry, I'm referring to the course. We spend time we spend some preliminary time working on the brand story. Obviously, it's not going to be fully fleshed out in over the course of an 8 hour, 2 4 hour modules, but beginning to think through what that story looks like. If facts tell, stories sell, right? That's what I what I always say, and chances are, you're a I'm talking small, maybe middle market businesses, right? So how do you draw people in? It's with that story. And chances are that story is going to come back to you as the founder. So why did you start the business? Or, what has the journey been to get where you are today to solve the problems you're solving for your customers? People love a good story. And working through what that brand story is. Again, it's depending on the size of the company, it's probably going to be tied pretty closely to the founder, which is great. So being able to work through that story and then being able to tell it, right? And again, it's a there's 2 4 hour modules in this course, so it's not completely done. You may have the basis of that brand story, and then how do you go and tell that? For somebody like Tony, like you and I, we might be at networking groups or we might book speaking gigs where we're verbally telling that story. Maybe somebody's an e-commerce business and you got to figure out how to tell that through a lot of digital channels. Sure, video helps, but maybe it's in another way, through social or some kind of timeline on a website. You've got to think through how that story gets distributed.
Yeah. And to your point, it's, I'm actually getting very, energized, excited by your conversation because there's also that juxtapose, at least from me, and I'm going to pull a little bit from my personal experience. But when you're working with a client and you get to a point where you tell the founder story, which generally it's kind of interesting. You either have a founder slash business owner that really wants to tell their story, right? Like it's almost like, oh, you're kind of a narcissist storyteller versus
Yeah.
that one that kind of shies away from it's like, oh, no one really wants to know about me. But when you, like you say, facts sell and stories tell, or story, like the reality is you get to a point where the shark jumps the hoop, or I can't remember what the phrase is, but
Right.
obviously I'm on medication this morning. But the reality is it's like you go from being a founder level company to just a not just a brand, but to a strong brand. And I do remember we were once Lauren and I, when we had Van and Associates, was 15 years ago before we changed the name, which was also a branding situation.
Yeah.
Most of the clients that came into us candidly came in because they knew me or knew of me or they had knew my name or whatever. I remember the first person that came in that I had never talked to. They didn't know who that guy was, but the brand had established itself as a quality brand. So it went from basically the founder's story to just basically a brand situation. And that was a very interesting because 2 points, it made me very proud. And I also felt extremely immediately disconnected from my own business, which was a
Oh,
weird
yeah.
situation. But it was because we had done the work on the front end, as you said, to make sure we told that story, and then people basically invested in that story and were
Yes.
willing to do that. So yeah,
Yes. And yeah, you told your story over and over and over again because marketing is
all
one
that
of the
is
key foundations of marketing is repetition, right?
just frequency. And then they finally were like, I don't know who that Van guy is, but
But I know that yeah,
they do something that I might need. And
right.
apparently they do it okay because I've heard it like 27 times. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into, another where I'm headed. You've got to get a lot of clarity up front. This is a very important exercise, a deep dive. Document it, right? So that way, everyone you hire is on the same page. If yeah, Tony, you're the owner, right? But you've got maybe a director of ops or a sales associate, even the people who are more in the trenches, writing social posts, updating copy on the website, whatever it is, they are very clear on what that brand story is, and the key messages that need communicated. And then certainly as well, if you have the brand standards guide, which everyone should, colors, fonts, imagery, all of that can be consistently communicated as well. But but the brand standards guide, you don't start there. There's a lot of like we talked about pre-work and deep dives that go into the creation of the physical brand and then the brand identity guides. So,
So what do you, when you're going through this process, basically what are you hoping to achieve on the, can we kind of put a little bit of a box or formula around, okay, so once we go through this, what do you get? And then how does that move you to forward and so on and so forth? Just a kind of a step one, two, three. Do you do that in your class?
oh, like in terms of,
So like if I were coming to somebody that was looking at a new brand, I would say, okay, well, like why do you feel like you need a new brand, or what's the update? What's the impetus, right? And then we would do the deep dive as you're talking about. So tell me a little bit about your company, where it started. Tell me about the story, the origin story, if you will, the prequel, the postquel, whatever the Hunger Games X, looks like. And then kind of like, what is your competition? What's their story look like? And then once we kind of encapsulate all of that, then we look toward, okay, I'm going to develop X, Y, and Z. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but something like, okay, I'm going to create a brand vision, then we're going to create a brand mission, and then what we're going to do is we're going to then build those tangible items that people are used to seeing, which you allude to, the brand standard guide, the brand itself, taglines. I'm trying to think of all the things, that type of thing. Do you do that process as well, or how does that work for you?
God, I understand your question now. So yes, so in terms of putting a box around this, yeah, there's that the very untangible whiteboarding discussion work. That would be, let's call that a phase one of the work. Then pen to paper, creative time to document things. And then there's the implementation of it. And some of that's very much in the trenches, and could be done relatively, I'm using air quotes, relatively quickly, right? Like it's tedious, but it can be, you can swap logos on social platforms, digital assets, things like that relatively quickly. If it's a brick and mortar or, there's signage or things, um, large scale printing type things, that's going to take, you got to factor in that timeline as well. And then there's just the implementation of it, right? Which, isn't just like, okay, we did the work and it's done, going back to frequency and repetition and telling that story over and over again. You do need to think through what is the longer term rollout look like? Yes, we know swapping things that could be done within a matter of days or weeks. How are we going to tell this story over the course of the next 6, 9, 12 months to really begin to get our story and our brand ingrained into the minds of our customers and our prospects? So really, yeah, three phases. We don't get into that in the course that I teach, because they have to I think there's one more module. I'm the third of four modules in this entrepreneurship course, and the woman who teaches the next one, I forget what it's called. I think it's called Bringing It All Together, right? So you spent time thinking through these pieces, the brand story, the mission, the vision. In that next module, a woman named Cheryl, she helps you think through. she helps the students think through what's next. For us, Tony, in the agency consulting space, yeah, I would think of it in terms of three big phases.
Nice. That's and one of the things I love about the process itself is I also feel like it almost becomes a story unto itself as well. I mean, there's a way that you can roll it out, like you were talking about, once again, and it's great, very tangible. So like letterhead changes, social media changes. I mean, I don't know if people do letterhead anymore, but like brochures, whatever that all that changes, right? And I have a kind of a quirky story about working for the city of Mesquite, Texas, and they did a brand change, and everyone wanted to keep, the old stuff. I was like, no, that's got to throw away because you can't
Right.
have two
You
brands
can't
in the
have two,
field,
but it's going to cause confusion.
and it's people freak out. But anyway, all that being said, you get to a point where it's like, okay, one of my favorite studies, which this is not going to surprise you, is the American Airlines change when they moved from their old brand to their new. The agency that did it, it took them almost 2 years to go through that process, and they used multiple phases, but they actually tell the story of that story. So it's very interesting as a consumer because you think, like we did the deal about Cracker Barrel or whatever, like
Yes.
what, and you're wearing a Spider jacket, which you already talked about. But why did Spider go with the Black Widow, or why didn't they do a
Hmm.
tarantula, or what? And if you can tell that story, then it becomes very, emblematic of, oh, I see, they really did think about it, and if they think that deeply about their brand, maybe they think that deeply about their product or their service, and I really identify with that, and then I venture to say, and this has been a great podcast. I love listening to you talk about this, but they in today's world, when you're building a brand, you're not building it for a consumer, you're building it for a stakeholder. You're building it for buy-in. And
Hmm.
so, yes, that buy-in may be the $9.99 widget that you're spending, but what you really want is someone to come back over and over again for your next product or your next service, and then tell other people about that brand or service that, hey, I mean, as I mentioned, hey, I just bought a Spider jacket last year and I really like it. That's that's part of the connection that a brand really brings to the table, if done well.
Yeah. I love that you've kind of taken this next step because the course ends with a discussion around culture, um, because
There
all
you
of
go.
this drives the culture. And you're right. Yeah. Why is somebody going to go buy a coffee from one coffee shop versus another?
That's
Does the
right.
brand resonate? Does when they walk into that physical location, they're like, oh, these are my people. This feels like home. This is where I want to buy my coffee.
Right. Right. And there, once again, and there's spectrum for everyone. I mean, you can't, how do I don't want to sound trite when I say this. You cannot, not everyone is your consumer. You cannot sell everything to everyone. So if you are someone that walks into the high end, I'm going to pay $15 for a coffee that has low soy, no sugar, blah, 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 chai, la, la, la. Cool. If you're the person that walks into McDonald's and wants the large black on black, airplane coffee that the spoon sticks in it like Jello, you're never, you never are going to see the value in that $30 coffee. You're going to be like, this has caffeine and it's hot. So, and it's the right
Yeah.
color. So I
And it
don't
meets my
care.
needs.
And it
Yes.
meets my need right now. And I can get a McDougal sandwich or whatever to go with it, and I'm good. Like I can get a whole meal for my family of nine for the cost of that one,
For
you
yeah,
know.
the one fancy coffee. Right.
Right.
Right. My
So,
brother would be upset with you. I think he loves McDonald's coffee.
well, I might or might not be also a guilty pleasure of a number seven with orange juice, add large black coffee. I'm just saying that might be an order that I've made a couple of times. So, all that being said, this has been great. And Liz, I think if you're up for it, we're talking about maybe doing a new project in 2026. I
Yes.
think this is something that we should bring to the table and really deep dive. And then maybe once we can lay the foundation, we can do a part two on this and talk a little bit to our listeners about what that might look like, and if they're interested in maybe even engaging in this process with you, that would be fantastic, right?
Oh yeah. Like I said, I love doing this work. I really think it's so fun. I love reading about it. So we can next time when we do a deeper dive, we can chat some specific books that I would recommend. Yeah, because this topic, we can go really deep on it. It's fun stuff.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, as always, great job. Great job by the lovely and talented Liz Hirsch. So,
Thank you.
yeah, very good. Well, this is going to wrap us up for this week from the Tales for the Dirt Road. And we appreciate you listening. I'm Tony Van,
And I'm Liz Hirsch.
and we will talk to you next week.
From gravel paths to starlit skies, we chase the sparks with open eyes. The future hums in the air tonight. Every step feels like first light. Will it bend like a willow or roar like a stream? Will it build a new